Facilitators, educators, and entrepreneurs will be invited to inspire and enlighten our listeners. Join Anwar Moolla for an interactive show and find out what really matters in business.
نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Yes, you're back with me, Anwar Moolla, on another Business Matters program. It's Monday, the 8th of September. It's just gone 18 minutes past 7. And I have a guest in the studio with me, ZURAIDA SAIB, from a company called ZURAIDA. And she's going to be talking to us about mentorship, solutions to unemployment, social entrepreneurship. It's lovely being back in the studio after a long break, doing lots and lots of traveling, been all over the show, China, Jordan, and many other places locally as well. But the studio called again and I'm back here. So lovely being in the studio with you once again and hopefully around for the next few weeks. ZURAIDA, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Radio Ansaar.
Walaikum salam and Jazakallah for the opportunity.
Lovely having you in the studio. It's normally a very lonely place, except for our technician here, but it's nice to have somebody as company. So, ZURAIDA, you have a company called ZA Gear, a clothing company, am I right?
So ZA Gear is not actually a clothing company at present. We've pivoted into a skills and development and incubation center for the clothing and textile industry.
Excellent. Before we get into discussing ZA Gear and what it can offer and how it can solve the not solve, but solve to an extent the problem of unemployment and social entrepreneurship. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your early years and your upbringing. Have you always been from Durban?
Gee, I've always been from Durban. I was just on the outside, and some of the people were asking me, "Are you from Cape Town?" So I told them, "No, I'm not." So you also asked me from Durban. Yes, I am from Durban, originally from Durban. My grandparents and parents were also from the clothing and textile industry, from the Kingsgate times.
Okay.
And alhamdulillah, I wasn't generally thinking of going into the career of clothing. So I was a dental therapist. That's what my career was all about. And my husband was a boilermaker. And opportunities, something came to the table when we got married and we saw the opportunities of the clothing and textile industry. It was 1994 and it was booming. So we decided to go into clothing. And but we started from very humble beginnings. It was just like 20 rands in one machine. And alhamdulillah, we've learned and we grew the business. In 2021, we had like around about 300 and some odd machines and 200 workers.
Wow, that's quite big.
Alhamdulillah, we used to manufacture a lot of goods for like your Edgar's, for Sheeny, all the
chain stores.
Chain stores. So it was quite high-end fashion garments. And then the unrest took place in 2021, and the entire building we were on, the Unsmarts area, was absolutely devastating because the entire thing was burnt down and looted. So we decided to move over and pivot the business, and we moved into the Morningside area, where we now have a skills and development and an incubation center for the clothing and textile industry.
Okay, your formal education?
My formal education in the clothing and textile?
No, just generally?
Generally, dental therapy.
Is it? Okay. So you're not looking into people's mouths anymore? But
no, I'm not.
But you're feeding some mouths.
Yeah. Gee, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great stuff. ZURAIDA, ZA Gear, was that started by yourself?
No, ZA Gear was started by the passion that my husband had
for
business. He's always been a businessman and always looked for opportunities. And when Mr. Nelson Mandela took over, we had a lot of opportunities because there were not many imports and South African businesses were booming. And then that's how it started. And then we decided to start manufacturing and we started supplying the chain stores. And alhamdulillah, the business grew.
Okay. You say you supply the chain stores. I also come from a clothing background, so I can relate to a lot of what you're talking about. So I'm going to put you on the spot a few times this evening. But getting involved with the chain stores is not as easy as it sounds. You have to prove yourself a lot before they even give you the opportunity. So, it kind of sounds a bit easy in saying, well, we involved with the chain stores and we're supplying the chain stores with clothing. But to get a foot in the door is the most difficult part. And once those doors open and you prove yourself and you deliver on time and you deliver quality merchandise and more than that, your stuff is selling at store level, which is a gauge of how good or bad it is, and obviously the right product at the right price. And then it becomes easier because you're proving yourself, and then one style becomes 2 stars, becomes 5 stars. You're smiling because you can relate to what I'm saying.
Gee.
But how difficult was it to get that first order, to get into the door, so to speak?
Like you say, Mr. Anwar, that, we sound like, it's so simple, we're smiling about it, but it is, I think it's one of the most challenging industries we are in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, I've actually seen the transition through the years from the early 90s when the streets of Grey Street and Peter Street and all those little small alleys like Carlisle Street and all of them were buzzing in the early 90s. And the roads used to be at 6:30 in the morning, we're absolutely busy. But if you walk down there now, it's not the same anymore. And you asked me, how did we get into the chain stores and was it challenging? It was absolutely challenging. And I think luck played a very big part of it, and also quality. And I think merchandisers and buyers as well in the chain stores, they look for that niche, they look for the quality. And like you say, they look for that on time, in full deliveries. Can you make your D dates? Can you make delivery dates? I think that's very important. And the big thing for me was the relationship. I think once you build that relationship with your buyer and you give them what they want and you give them good quality and your orders are not getting rejected, then definitely your leg will be in the door and then, you would get business. But alhamdulillah, in those years, it was much more simpler.
For sure, yeah.
And you had quality-driven workers as well, employees, and that were very dedicated. They came from the old school of, thought. But alhamdulillah, now, since we have the new generation in technology, I think it's also made a huge difference as well. So it's having to understand how to innovate, how to change, But alhamdulillah, we've come through all those challenges. It's been very difficult. I won't say no about that. But alhamdulillah, we've moved forward as well.
Okay, you spoke about creativity. So how important is it in terms of creativity in setting apart a sewing business in today's very competitive market like we've just discussed?
For a small business, which I see many small businesses at present, because of us being a skills and development center and incubation hub, we mentor and coach many SMMEs, and many of them are like from one person to 5 people, and a lot of them have challenges in terms of understanding the market, understanding the needs. So many of them but have this creative mindset and have such good ideas, especially with technology and social media and all that's happening. It helps them along. So a lot of the smaller businesses, what they're doing is they're networking a lot. They're looking at online platforms. And I think that is what's assisting them with the creativity as well and trying to figure out the access to markets. And I think what's the best part for us at present is technology. I think that is assisting a lot with small businesses.
Okay. You on the Business Matters show with me, Anwar Moolla. The Business Matters show brought to you by the Minara Chamber of Business or the Minara Chamber of Commerce. And we're speaking to ZURAIDA SAIB, and she's the CEO of a company called ZA Gear. Now, ZURAIDA, you mentioned earlier that you've kind of transformed the business post the looting kind of scenario. Firstly, you moved premises, and I've worked out that you're actually based very close to where I am in Ivy Road, just off Amgeni Road. And now you kind of specializing in in mentorship, in solutions to unemployment. So tell us, ZURAIDA, what actually happens is if there's people that are wanting to develop the skill, or a company that doesn't, that has got maybe machines but doesn't have the employees and doesn't know where to start looking for these employees, or doesn't have the ability to train these employees, is that where you fit in? Where would you come in this whole process?
Gee, that's exactly where we would fit in the sense that we administer many projects in terms of the clothing and textile programs. We have lots of projects with the National Skills Fund, with your CETAs, and all our projects are accredited. All our programs are accredited. So at present in our Skills and Development Center, we have a batch of 50 learners that are busy with their learnership program for sewing machine operations. And what we do is once they've completed their project and their programs, we then are affiliated with many of the factories, many of businesses in the clothing and textile industry, where we would then have an exit plan for these learners for employment. So this relationship that we have built with many of the companies around Durban assists and helps with employment with our youth and our women and all the people that are, especially that are on our programs. So Alhamdulillah, in the past few years, we've practically established some good relationships with many of the schools, like your companies called like Jockey Gym School, where the Bayer Group. And what we've done, we've trained these learners and we've put them into employment in many of these factories.
Okay. Has government played its part in terms of assisting people like yourselves? You mentioned CETAs. So has there been funding available from government for you to train these people?
Listen, the funding has been there, but it hasn't been that great.
Okay.
But Alhamdulillah, whatever it's been, I mean, we've made a difference to many lives. So what has happened as well, many of the big businesses with their BEE scorecards and stuff like that, they have also paid for many of the trainings as well that we administer. We've also collaborated recently with many of our Islamic organizations like SANZAF as one of them as well. And we've had some donors from Cape Town as well that have donated for some of our projects that we administer as well. So the government has been there, but not 100%. But shukr, we've had quite a few projects. We also are affiliated with many of the overseas organizations as well, like your Alliance Francaise. We have an organization called SAFLEC, the South African Footwear and Leather Export Council, where we incubate SMMEs, and then thereafter, maybe after a year or two, they would then go and exhibit overseas. At present, we have one of our SMMEs that is exhibiting in UK this week.
Wow. Okay.
And in Paris.
Okay.
So Alhamdulillah, there is a lot of opportunities, and government has come in with a lot of small projects, even your eThekwini municipality as well. They have business support groups as well. Even the economic development, they have funded many of the small businesses with machinery. So Alhamdulillah, they're there. They may not be 100%, but I think having to be compliant will also assist many businesses as well, small businesses.
Sure, it would. But then you have to pay minimum wages, and I think that's where a lot of these companies find the difficulty. But you have to conform to the law. So, in terms of what you do, you would take in these so-called learners, and while they are learning or going through the process, I mean, there's many different skills to be learned in the sewing industry, and I can attest to that. While they're going through this process, are they sewing garments that would be able to be resold or sold, or is it just pieces of kind of leftover fabric that they kind of using to just stitch and make sure there's no puckering on the garments and things like that?
I like the way you use the terminology, so you can just see that you're a man from this industry as well. Okay, so what we do is we try to make sure that whatever is taught to these learners gets them ready for the workplace. So in terms of quality, productivity, understanding all types of fabrics, we make sure that everything that is taught to these learners gets them ready for the workplace in a proper production plant. You asked a question about, are we just going to get them to sew pieces of fabric? No, we don't. We make sure we get them to stitch every type of garment, whether they are difficult pockets, cargo pockets, whether they are collars, all different types of fabrics, different procedures, different operations, where they would be able to understand when they are working in a different factory what they need to do in terms of quality and productivity. We also make them complete garments, complete proper garments, not just pieces. The program started in July, and our 50 learners have already stitched, I think it must be 8 to 10 garments already. From very complicated garments as well, like, a men's cargo pants, a men's t-shirt, a men's shirt. So alhamdulillah, we're making sure that they complete proper garments at the end of the day, not just stitching pieces of fabric.
I'm going to test you with a men's suit. If you can get that one right for me, that's what we are. Absolutely.
Most definitely, I will.
So let's talk a bit about the ability to find people to come and join your kind of entrepreneurial school. And I like the concept of what you're doing. But based on experience, like traveling out to China quite often and working with factories in China and things like that, and I'm talking about massive organizations that sew for chain stores all over the world. I'm talking about the Walmarts and the Massmarts. I mean, Massmart's small down here, but the Walmarts and the H&Ms and the Marks and Spencers. Now, the one real problem that even China finds with its billions of people and with its massive population is that the clothing industry is not a glamorous industry to be sitting behind this machine, sewing garments all day long, having a tea break, a lunch break, and a short break in the afternoon. But it's certainly not glamorous. You're very often not working in an air-conditioned environment, and we have the heat of Durban to contend with. Similarly, in China as well. And why would I want to sit behind a sewing machine where there's so many other nicer things I could be doing? Now, if I take the situation in China, for example, the younger population that's coming through, they would rather be making an Apple phone, for example, and working for Apple or one of the electronic computer companies rather than sewing a garment. It's just not the glamorous place to be again. So what's happening is when you're going into the factories, you're finding a lot of older people, and there's no kind of succession coming through because the next generation, and also in China, which is a bit peculiar, is that they had this one-child policy for many, many years.
Yes.
So if you are a couple and you have only one child, be it male or female, you want the best for that child. You're not going to encourage a child to go and work in a clothing factory unless they're pretty desperate. But there's so many other more glamorous things that they could do out there. And even if it means planting your own vegetables and growing your own crop, if you have the space to do that. So I'm saying, relating that and bringing it back into South Africa, how easy is it to get people to come into the clothing industry? Because a few of the factories that I've also visited in the Durban and surrounding areas, and talking Port Shepstone, Umkomaas, going through to the North Coast, the owners of the factories all complain about the fact that we can't find good workers, and emphasis on good. We can't find good workers. But workers that we're getting, we spend many, many hours training, and then when we train them, they leave and go to work for somebody else. Common things that you hear. So question that I'm coming back to is how easy is it to find these people to come and learn under you?
I like the way you explained everything, because that is exactly what's happening in the industry at present. It's not glamorous. It's not so-called, they want to see it looking, very sexy and very smart. And, it needs to be like, where these young people are going to want to flock in.
Sure.
So it is difficult. And like you say, people are saying we can't find good workers.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. When we moved to Mayville, and it so happened we were just talking now, and I happened to realize that I took over the place that you were.
So I've now moved from Mayville. I moved to Mayville. You came in after me, and I've now moved to Ivy Road, and now you. So you seem to be following me wherever I go.
Like,
anyhow.
So when you say we can't find good workers, From 2013, when I started the project with the accredited programs, with the learnerships and training young people in the clothing and textile industry, when they completed their programs, they actually got an NQF Level 2 certification. And from there were a lot of opportunities for them to grow from a machinist into maybe a merchandiser, into a quality control person, maybe moving into patterns, maybe moving into the CAD systems. There was so much other technical parts to the clothing and textile. It's not just about sewing a garment, it's about designing. It's about patterns, it's about, doing drafting and, grading and all of that. So there's so many parts to it. So when people look at a factory, they just look at, sewing clothes only, and it doesn't look very nice, doesn't feel very nice. So when we brought about the training and we started bringing young people in, we tried to make the environment conducive to young people. We tried to make the environment, the culture of the company much more competitive, much more lively, bring in some, incentives into the company and make it something that young people want to come into,
Okay.
Brought in the competition, brought in the education, because we were upskilling them and training them every year. There was a new qualification that they would enter every year. And that made them feel motivated. It made them feel educated, smarter as well. So when I left and when we were looted in 2021, I had 200 workers and 98% of my workers were below the age of 35.
Okay.
And they all manufactured your high-end chiffon garments that wear like Duns, the Charter Club, all your Edgars, your Fushini, your Truetts. They were all high-end, high-margin garments as well, which they did a very good job of because they were trained and they had a qualification. So that's how we brought them in. And I think so also encouraging them and educating them and giving them incentives as well. And I don't think everybody's bad out there. And like you asked me, how do we get people to join our programs? We have hundreds of people that are waiting to join the programs because they don't have the knowledge and they want to learn and they want these opportunities. So they take these skills back. And like you said, in Ankomars and Amzinto and Port Shepstone, there's lots of factories up there. They're going back and they're getting jobs up there as well because they have a skill, they have a qualification. Okay. So alhamdulillah, we have lots of people that come in.
Okay, so while they're learning under you and they're gaining this, typically, how long do they have to spend with you to be fully trained?
Well, we've got different programs. You could do a program for 3 months, which is a skills program, just your basic quality, productivity, joint component parts, where you're understanding how to use a machine and put products together. Then we have a 6-month project as well, which is a little bit longer, a little bit more intense, understanding patterns, grading, cutting room, dispatching, and also sewing. And then we have a learnership program, which is a 12-month program. Sometimes it could finish in 10 months, where they understand practically all operations, all processes in sewing. And, it's an entire 120 credits and it's entire qualification. So they learn all the basics and in-depth studies of how to construct a garment.
And while these learners are under your care and learning from you, do they get paid?
Yes. So all of the learnership programs, they come with a stipend. So these learners would get paid on a monthly or weekly basis, even the skills programs as well. So they get a stipend to help them with their bus fares and their transport and food. And then after 6 months, we normally would put them into workplace experience in many of the factories and companies, depending on the programs that they are on.
Okay. One of the major challenges that many industries face in South Africa, and it's not only peculiar to the clothing industry, but clothing industry faces this challenge all the time, is the one of unions. Now, it's a red flag where lots of people that say, I'd love to start my own factory. I can see the demand. I can see that we can make a success of this, but I don't want to deal with the unions. They are a pain in the whatever you want to call it. But I mean, do you find that this is a common problem that you also face?
Listen, it's a very common problem, especially with I wouldn't even say smaller businesses, even medium businesses as well. Maybe the very massive businesses like your Sal Roses and your TFGs and all of them, they could be a bit more compliant in the sense that they get a lot of funding from the IDC and the DTIC. But with our smaller guys, it's very difficult. Most of them are moving into the co-ops space,
right,
where they are kind of like developing cooperatives, and they're kind of like escaping into that space, because I think the demands from the bargaining council are really huge. And the big drama that most of our clothing and textile industry is having is that the imports are really hectic at the moment. And you know what? Our local businesses can't compete with the prices. And that becomes very difficult, especially for CMTs.
Okay.
CMTs are now given prices that are absolutely low, that they cannot join the bargaining council. So they've moved on to the co-op system. And I think that's a little bit of kind of escaping some of the levies and some of the surcharges that are instilled by the bargaining council. So they try to give their workers a proper minimum wage, and they try to do their holiday pays and whatever extra they can. But I think the extra fees from the bargaining council becomes too exorbitant for them. I don't think they can afford that.
Yeah, especially when you're getting offered ridiculous, what we call cut, make and trim or CMT prices. And like I often hear this, Mr. Price is offering me so much for this garment. I mean, when I look at what I pay as wages and how much of work is involved, there's no way I can make this garment. How they landed at that price, we don't know, kind of thing. It's a common story. You've probably heard it many times over. And what then people tend to resort to is to pay below the minimum wage, which is really illegal, and you don't want to go there, but they're forced to do that because otherwise they just can't come out, so to speak.
Sure.
And there you get the bargaining council or the union knocking on your door, and they want you to make sure that the toilet is in that condition and the canteen is in that condition, and all of those very, very good things, which are nice to have. But when you're trying to literally put food on the table, those become secondary issues, as in, you know what, I've got a toilet and I've got a canteen, and like, okay, do I have to, like, how glamorous does it have to be, so to speak? So these are common problems that we all face in the industry. You've probably been through it many times. But obviously the people that you turn out and the people that employ from you, you must be giving them some good advice from your side.
We try as far as possible, and we try and make sure that they're going to companies that are trying to comply at least 80%. Right. We want to also make sure that our people have proper livable wage.
Absolutely.
Because all of them also have families, they have expenses. It becomes difficult, but we have a huge problem in Durban, a huge problem in terms of undocumented foreign nationals. And that is playing a huge part in our industry, and that because of that, our South Africans do not get the jobs that were put out there for them, because undocumented foreign nationals now are getting paid lower salaries, lower wage rates, and they're willing to take the job and they're willing to work. And our South Africans thereby are not able to get these jobs. And that's why the unemployment rate is so high as well in South Africa.
Yes, I was very surprised that even some of the bigger buildings in the CBD of Durban, there's factories running in a lot of them, and little rooms or whatever, but turning out factories and turning out decent garments.
True.
So call it exploitation or whatever you want to, but a lot of the people are being exploited, and they're willing to work for these minimum wages in these factories, or maybe call them sweatshops if you want to. And they make a little bit of money, and then a formally regulated factory is unable to compete with this type of this thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm sure you these challenges.
We have these challenges all the time. We have them all the time, and that's why lots of little co-ops are pocketing up all over, where they, like 5 mamas or whatever, they would go to schools and they would get projects where they are starting to manufacture the uniforms and corporate wear, for these organizations as little co-ops, because they don't want to be in the bargaining council. They can't get jobs in factories. So they're trying to create their own little businesses, their own little brands, so that they can sustain their community, sustain their families. And that's what's happening at the moment, because they practically have given up on this. But you don't blame the businesses, because government has to do something about the imports. It's becoming ridiculous.
Well, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about ZA Gear. You pay these people a wage while they're training, something that can sustain them for that 3, 6, 12-month period, however long they would you. But surely you can't live on fresh air. You need funding to be doing all of this, to be paying those wages, and to be doing all of the training that you do. So, I mean, really, where does your funding come from?
That's a very nice question that you're asking me. So it's been very challenging in the past few years. You would get funding, but it's just very minimal. And it's just there to pay the rent and, pay expenses, pay wages and what have you. And some of the funding comes from the CETAs and also NSF and all of these government bodies, whereby they would fund you for the facilitation part of it. So that's how the company runs and the business runs. And then we do have some private organizations as well that we train for, like many of your bigger private companies, clothing and textile companies that we train for as well.
Okay. Technology plays an important part even in sewing garments today. I can tell you that, these automated pocket making machines and things, they cost lots and lots of money. I'm sure digital pattern making is part of what you teach. Those machines also cost
a lot of money.
I think the famous one is the Gerber cutters. They cost a lot of money. So how do you afford to be keeping your machinery updated all the time?
So, alhamdulillah, we've received quite a bit of funding in the past few years, where we've got a lot of automated new machinery. And at present, we're trying to get some new stuff with a new application for your sublimation machines, your new CAD systems and your digitizers and stuff like that. But inshallah, we're looking for funders as well, if there are anybody out there. But it's very challenging to get government to come to the party with funding. It's not easy at present, but we're trying to, we just keep pushing.
Okay, so let's turn the discussion a little bit and say, here's a person that's got a bit of skill in terms of sewing, but she's a woman that wants to set up a small little clothing company and then build from there. Perhaps to be supplying to the bigger clothing people, or to be able to take on little contracts that she may be able to get. So she would be turning to somebody like yourself to supply her with the skilled labor. What would be her point of entry, or what would you advise her to, where does she start from?
Well, most of our small single entrepreneurs that come to us with an idea of a brand or whatever the story may be, they would come to me and they'll say, listen, I want to do hijabs.
Right.
I want to do cloaks. I found this idea and I would like to do it. So lots of them come with these ideas. I mean, they look at somebody else and they feel that it's simple. I mean, we've been in this business for 30 years and it's not easy. But alhamdulillah, they persevere and they have this passion that they don't want to stop. So I would go back and tell them, listen, make sure you do your costing, do your research and look at the market. Because remember, there's so many people out there that's doing the same thing. Figure out your niche. Look at what's different. Look at what people are looking for. And then we, as ZA Gear, you would come to us. We would align you in all terms of compliance, especially with your company registration and understanding all the aspects of being compliant, so that at least we could then affiliate you with like your CEDAs and your ETIA, where you would be able then to get funding.
Right.
To develop your brand for your marketing, and also with PSA, that's Productivity SA, so that at least it can assist you at least with some kind of funding so that you can start developing your brand. And then we would take you on and teach you the skills, and to understand what kind of quality products you need to do and all the different types of fabrics, machinery, patterns, and all of that, so that at least you are able to build this brand and understand it. Because you can't just produce or make something when you don't understand the technicality behind it.
Okay. So can you tell us about some of the current opportunities in the sewing sector, from school uniforms to slope fashion? What can entrepreneurs tap into right now?
At the moment, the big thing with government and many of the rural areas is that they are looking for many small businesses in rural developments and communities to manufacture uniforms for the schools in the areas. So we have like around about 5 or 6 small businesses in rural that have started little co-ops that are developing uniforms for the schools in the area. And they're actually producing some good stuff, and they've really grown. And from the uniforms, we now find that businesses in that area, we've affiliated them with, that they would then make overalls for maybe like your NPC or some kind of a company that's industry driven and would like to give back to the community. So these little small factories are now growing and developing because they are now manufacturing for the community around them and businesses as well.
Excellent. We've kind of reached the last few minutes of our program. So can you give some guidance to someone who wants to start a socially impactful sewing business today?
I've seen many young people, especially young people that are very passionate about design, and they are creative and they love fashion, that I think it's about 5 or 6 of them who have now developed very different stuff. Like I have one group of 2 ladies, young ladies. They even have their PhDs in chemistry, but they've found that they wanted to manufacture pet clothing.
Pet clothing, okay.
Pet clothing. And they're doing extraordinarily well. They've joined the DTLI as well, and they've now won a pitch, and they've got funding. There's another company called DB Clothing. They are in PE.
All right.
They're making denim jackets, but very upstyled, recycled. So they would get old jackets from people, they will cut them up and they will restyle them. So he's doing very well with that as well. So a lot of these young people and a lot of new businesses, especially the young people, have now grown their businesses and put it online, which is at least helping them. And they're using Proudly South African, they're using ETIA, they're using a lot of the government projects to help market their projects and help market their products, which is assisting them now to at least move forward and be profitable as well. They're doing things different. And I think they are using the networking, which is very important. I think networking is the most important thing in any new business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Zuraida, where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? I mean, what are you aspiring towards from here?
You know, Anwar, I love people, and I love what I saw in the last 30 years in the sense of passion. I love what happens when I teach someone to make a garment. I love what happens at the end of that. They are absolutely appreciative. They're so enthusiastic that they want to move further. And when I see that joy in their eyes, when I look at what they can do, and when I look at what they take back to their communities in terms of poor people, what they build, what they make, you know, it's unbelievable. I started the project with Sanzaf this week, where we've donated 8 machines to 8 people, and they are now sewing, and they started last week. These women were so excited. One's going to do church uniform, one's going to do corporate wear. So all of these things. So when you look at them and you look at the excitement in them, this is what I want to do. I want to give back to the communities. I want to give back to our poor people. You know, I want them to have a skill so that at least they can build themselves. And this is what I want to do for the next few years. You know, as much as you want to make money, but alhamdulillah, if we can do the right thing, I'm sure we can also make money as well.
Absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. At least I'm speaking to somebody that I can relate to this evening. So in my space. But yeah, I mean, All that you said, I can relate to in terms of the challenges that this industry faces, especially from imports coming through, and it's not easy. But somehow this clothing industry has been resilient. You mentioned at the early part of this program, companies like Kingsgate, they've been around for 40, 50 years, and inshallah they'll be around for another 40, 50 years. But they provide so much of employment for people in our community, from management level right down to the unskilled labor. But they've provided so many jobs, and every family that you speak to in Durban and you look back into their roots, somebody or the other from there worked for Kingsgate at some point in time, or one or two of the other big companies that are out there. So inshallah, there's sustainability there, and long may they carry on, and others in that ilk, basically. But yeah, we wish there was a way in which we would all be proudly South African and not have to import. I know in my sphere of clothing, which is men's suits, there are very few, if any, clothing companies left in South Africa that can produce a good men's suit, basically. And that's a challenge that we're facing all the time. We'd love to have our garments made locally, but we don't have the skill and the ability to do that. So I'm going to chat to you after this program, and maybe together we can do something in that like, and maybe in when we speak a year down the line, we'll have the ability to produce men's suits in South Africa. Who knows? But inshallah, it's been lovely chatting to you. Nice coming in, and wish you everything of the very best. Lastly, some contact details if people are interested in getting hold of you and taking you up on some of what you've just discussed.
So you can come and visit us in number 30 Ivy Road. We're on the first floor. You could also contact us on our website. Our website address is zagearskills.co.za.
ZA Gear Skills.
Right. Also, you can call us on 031 312 3775.
So that's 312 3775. Okay.
And you can also WhatsApp us and go onto our website. There's a WhatsApp messages that you could send us as well, and we're willing to assist if we can.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, and thanks for your time. With that, it's wassalamu alaikum, and inshallah, I'll be back with you on another Business Matters program next Monday at about 7:10. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Business Matters. The title suggests many things. The important issue is the world revolves around business, society, organizations, individuals, and even religion survives and thrives because of business. Business has to encompass not just financial commodity and service transactions. It has also to include welfare, justice,